Hey scholars, welcome back to chapter 21, where we're looking at 21-2, how should we actually deal with the solid waste that we talked about in the previous lesson. So let's get into it today. We can burn or bury solid waste or produce less of it. Those are basically our three choices. Burn it, bury it, or just produce less of it, which I'm a big, I hope to do a little more of that than any other for the first two. We look at the term waste management, which is basically means not reducing waste, but reducing the impact of waste. So even though we're not trying to stop our waste overall or kind of slow it, we're just trying to reduce the impact that it has on the environment or back on ourselves. The other term, waste reduction, just directly contributes to reducing the waste produced overall. So trying to actually stop producing waste overall. We use a system called integrated waste management, which uses a variety of strategies, and most everybody does this. As long as you are recycling every once a week. Recycling or reusing, composting, and then using landfills as our last resort. That's what we call integrated waste management systems. Let's take a closer look at that in kind of a diagram thing. So when we look at the diagram, it shows raw materials right here. And then obviously I go through products and manufacturing and what we produce are products. But unfortunately, we do have waste materials that are, kind of exposed and have to deal with after the processing and manufacturing. And some of those are solid and hazardous waste generated during that manufacturing. So the solid waste actually can go into manufacturers, back into manufacturing for reuse or recycling. Some of it's probably going to be hazardous waste, so it's going to have go through hazardous waste management, which we'll talk about a little bit later at the end of this chapter. And then even some of it will have to remain as mixed waste and go into a landfill. So that's just off the processing and manufacturing. Once it's a product, then it's got to be used. And once it's used, there is waste generated there by households and businesses. And if it's just regular stuff, it can be then reused or recycled back to the manufacturer. Or some of it can be food and yard waste and be composted and used as fertilizer. And then some of it actually is going to be hazardous and have to go with hazardous waste management. And then some of it will actually be put in a landfill or incinerator, one of the two. That's kind of the whole integrated waste management system of trying to find different methods and splitting up the materials of the waste and figuring out what to do with it from there. Okay? Let's take a look at our priorities when we're dealing with integrated waste management. The first priority of primary pollution and waste prevention. And basically that is changing your industrial processes to eliminate the use of harmful chemicals and any of that hazardous stuff. Use less of a harmful product. So the product needs to be produced that will be less harmful when it's done with as well to the environment. Reduce packaging and materials in the products themselves, especially the unused stuff, like packaging and materials. Make products that last longer and are recyclable, reusable, or easy to repair. Those are our first priority when dealing with waste overall. Second priority is the secondary pollution and waste prevention by just reusing, repairing, recycling, composting, or buying reusable and recyclable products. That's our second priority as consumers and in this whole process of waste management. The last priority, which we want to try to do the least amount of, is treat waste to reduce toxicity, incinerate waste, a big one, or bury waste in landfills, or even release waste in the environment for dispersal and dilution. Those last three are kind of the real last-ditch efforts that we really don't want to try to do very much at all. Okay, one of the science focus is on garbology, and this guy named William Rathé, he basically took apart landfills and analyzed the garbage and saw how long some things actually took to decompose. And some of his findings, things were, because of lack of oxygen or lack of, bacteria getting them because they're so compacted, things were lasting, hundreds of years in landfills and weren't actually breaking down. So that does have, if there's not enough oxygen or moisture, then things don't break down as easy and they can stay in that landfill state for a long, long period of time. And sometimes they even leach out. But we're going to do our own kind of garbology lab looking at our own trash amount for a one-day period if we haven't already. So definitely kind of think back to that and keep that in mind when we're doing this. All right, so waste reduction is based on three things, the 3 R's we call them. Reduce, which is consuming less. Reusing, which is used repeatedly. And then the third one, recycling or remaking into it, breaking it down, remaking other useful products but keeping those same materials. And there's 7 strategies overall to help kind of cut waste by reducing, reusing, and recycling. The first one is to redesign the manufacturing process to use less materials and less energy. That's kind of our preventative measure. Redesign manufacturing to produce less waste and less pollution. And then number 3, develop products that are easy to repair, reuse, manufacture, compost, or recycle. So they're easy to deal with that in that first or second priority. Number 4, eliminate or reduce unnecessary packaging. That's a big one. I always get perturbed by unnecessary packaging. Number 5, use a fee per bag waste collection system. So that way you're paying for not necessarily a one-stop fee, like I pay $20 a month for my trash pickup. I'd have to, if I paid fee per bag waste collection system, maybe I would start producing less. That way I wouldn't have as much bags to produce or to throw away to pay for. Number 6, establish a cradle-to-grave responsibility by the producer or the companies that are making our products. And then also number 7, restructure urban transportation systems that would help with less transportation of goods and services. So that's those are the top 7 strategies in cutting waste, reducing and reusing and recycling. All right, so what can you do? Follow those 3 R's. Ask yourself whether you really need a particular item, or buy secondhand, like from Goodwill or Salvation Army, and donate and sell unused items. That way other people are using those, which I highly recommend, especially when you go into college. It's cheaper to buy those kind of clothes, and it doesn't really matter because you're just in college anyway. Buy things that are reusable, recyclable, or compostable, and be sure to reuse, recycle, and compost them. Don't just, if you buy those, don't throw them away. Do what it says to do with them. Avoid disposables, and don't use throwaway paper and plastic plates and cups and eating utensils and styrofoam bowls and things like that, and other disposable items. When reusable or refillable, do it, okay? Use email or text messaging in place of conventional paper mail, especially when you're paying bills. Read newspapers and magazines online, so you're not getting those as as a resource and you're having to deal with those and recycle those. Also, buy products in bulk or concentrated from whenever possible, so you're saving less in packaging overall. Okay, those are some things you can do to cut your own solid waste down, and hopefully after looking at the Garbology Lab, or if you haven't already, we'll see some major changes in your lifestyle after this. Okay, well, that's it for this section. Next time we're going to look at reusing and recycling materials and why is that so important overall, and looking at some stats and figures that go with it. See you guys next time.